Welcome to the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. This is the show where we break through the fear of change and ask the question, scared? So what? Each week we dive into personal change management, coaching, and leadership for the future, giving you real-world tools, insights, and stories to help you lead yourself and others through transformation. Whether you're navigating change in your life, your career, or your organization, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to take bold action. So, are you ready? Let's move from fear to forward. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. This is episode 8, Leadership and Integrity. And today we're joined by Dr. Jeremy Chapman, an award-winning wealth manager, social innovator, and thought leader committed to responsible business. Recognized with the St. James's Place Responsible Business Award in 2023, Dr. Chapman is also the co-founder of the Integrity Center and creator of the Integrity Wealth Model, and so much more. Please help me and welcome our guest, Dr. Jeremy Chapman. Hi, Dr. Jeremy. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on the show, Grant. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. You and I are friends. We go back just a little ways because we did our doctorates at the same time. Is that right?
We did. We did indeed. So we've been through the same huge challenge, which I rather liken to climbing up Mount Everest, getting down, and then going up again. It was not easy, wasn't it?
It was not easy. It was not easy. But at least in helping each other, we were able to get through it successfully. So
absolutely right. Absolutely.
Well, you've been very busy with your work and so much. I just see you all over social media and all of the success you're doing. And I'm so honored to actually have some time with you today. And so thank you. But first and foremost, my first question is, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your exciting career?
Sure. Well, look, again, great to be here, and thanks for that big build-up. Well, look, my sort of journey started in Singapore, which is relevant, and I'll come back to that shortly. But I was born to a military family, and the work ethic, or the sort of family ethic, I should say, was hard work. Get down to it. If you work hard, you'll achieve more. And I finished my A-levels and had a place at university at 18, but decided not to go and immediately went into work, driven by that work ethic, that mentality of get down to it, get on with it, earn some money, with the ultimate goal, long term, of when you've got enough, you'll be happy. So I really dug deep and started to climb up the sort of metaphorical business ladder. And 25 years ago, I set up my own business, a wealth management business. We're called Sycamore Alliance Limited, based in the UK, and we're attached to the UK's largest wealth manager, St. James's Place. And I kind of realised about 12 years ago that I started to ask questions of my journey, not kind of what I was doing, but more this sort of value that was established when I was young. It came from my family, as values do, the people you surround yourself, your experiences, your family, your friends, and so on. And that overarching driver in me, that value in me, was to have more, do more, have more, and relentlessly charge in this direction.
Yeah.
But I realized about 12 years ago, actually, you know what? I kind of feel like something shifted. It's not working so well. I feel somewhat unfulfilled. I couldn't work this out. And this is where the link back to Singapore goes, because, well, you and I both have done a professional doctorate. And in the title of mine is a word called kiasu, which is Singaporean dialect, which very appropriate for what you do, Grant. It means being afraid to lose.
Yeah.
And in a way, this I realise now, having unpicked my professional journey, that kiasu was interplaying with who I was. There was this fear, there was this not wanting to lose what I've achieved, and yet I felt somewhat out of alignment. And being tethered to a machine that demanded more growth, more income, etc., didn't make me happy. I made that realization. At that point, I worked with a business coach, and this unlocked the permission in myself to think differently. And I believe that we're in society today, we're driven with this extrinsic value set, this notion of, exactly as I had it, we need to do more, have more, chase more, get more growth, and then we'll be happy. And part of that as well is accelerated by social media, with all of us seeing images of winners, and we want to be winners. Society elevates winners. We don't like the perceived losers. We want the winners. So therefore, we're all aiming at the top, but many of us feel let down and disillusioned when we can't get anywhere near.
So true.
And I made sense of this with my my doctoral work, and I can see that society pushes us one way, and we have to be brave to stand up and push the other way, which actually could be argued as being the more natural state. We're thinking of simpler things. We connect with other humans. We help people out. We chat over the garden fence instead of racing from one place to the next. I've got no time to talk to you. I'm in my car. Someone's holding me up. I'm beeping my horn. I'm really upset, and I've kind of made sense of this. It's sort of means if we hold this word integrity now, which is the golden thread of my research. What does it mean? It sort of hangs amongst us. We all generally would say, if we were asked, I got integrity. I'm someone that is trustworthy. I always do the right thing. But research shows that we tend to use this as a tool. So when it suits us, we have integrity, but when it doesn't, we'll break the rules. And this sort of is from top to bottom, bottom to top, leaders and otherwise. In fact, if we look at some of the icons in play right now, the question is, do they act with integrity? Are they doing the right thing? Are they holding themselves to account? I think we know.
Spot on. I think we know the answers exactly, but that's just absolutely real for the moment.
Yeah, it's not about, it's about holding the self to account. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. It's about doing the right thing when no one's looking. And this isn't easy. And there's no real signposting in terms of how we get into this position and stay there. And I found this fascinating. And this is then what led to me starting the Integrity Centre with Professor Martin Kalnan, a friend of mine who works at École de Pont Business School in Paris, where we're just meandering through what this means, how we can embed it in business, how we can educate, coach, train, and further research. And I'm really thrilled that there are now 13 of us at the Integrity Centre, all pointed at, holding ourselves to account, but trying to just shift the dial for the better.
Yeah. Well, this is just amazing, and congratulations on all of your success. I've had the privilege of knowing you throughout your doctoral journey, but just to watch and learn and hear you speak about leadership and integrity, it's just so refreshing, because it is something that's missing in today's leadership, in today's world. And I loved what you said about how we can have integrity when it suits us, and then at other moments, well, if it doesn't suit our mission or our vision, then maybe we go our own ways, and that's our own human bias, right? So, well, let me ask you, you've decided to focus on leadership and integrity. So can I go a little bit personal and ask you yourself, what is your leadership style, and what do you believe important for you in your journey in leadership?
Yeah, well, look, firstly, thank you for your kind words, I should say. And to answer your question, it'll be no surprise that it's integrity-led. So through my research, I've I've come up with a definition of what it means and how to harness it. And that sort of, there are several parts to this, but a significant part is how we deal with values. Mm-hmm. And I've touched on this already. It's this idea that, we're born into the world and we're a blank canvas. And we have fingerprints on us, to for want of another way of phrasing it, of the people that we interact with, our parents, their beliefs, their friends, their family.
Yeah.
And then as we get older, our friends, the things we read, our teachers, our guides, our employers. And these all shape the way we feel. And that makes this an emotional journey as well. We have positive triggers, negative triggers. Things make us happy, unhappy. Mm-hmm. And this is often rooted in our value set. Our value set can be shifted if we choose to slow down and pay attention to it. And I strongly believe in coaching, because this gives us permission to slow down and do just that. But more than this, if we have these value sets, the question is what's our purpose? And many people and many organizations struggle to articulate their why, what their purpose is. Why do I do what I do? Often you ask people that question and they struggle to articulate it. So our work sort of points at that. My leadership style points at that as well. So I have this sort of framework where I can guide people through my experience, my research, and my style. And I think this whole sort of thinking it's not just about ethical behavior, not just about doing it right. It's we can say we're doing it right. Yeah. Back to the point I said we talked about earlier. If we extend this further, it's how we're aligned with who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And Dr. Martha Beck has a really beautiful way of explaining this, and she likens it to an aeroplane. A plane. Okay. We all like going on holiday, rightly or wrongly. Flying is not maybe the best of things to be doing, given the sort of the narrative around global warming. But nevertheless, most of us do this, and we put faith and trust in the structural integrity of this amazing bit of machinery, and we don't really think twice about it. But there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of parts coming together in harmony to work, to get us up to a great height, to take us great distances and get us back on the ground safely. If that aeroplane does not have structural integrity, it will not get off the ground, and worst case, it will crash.
Yeah.
I believe we're exactly the same as human beings. If we are out of alignment, if we do not have what I call personal structural integrity, then we can crash.
Yeah.
We're not functioning. Right. We're not in alignment. And there are two significant things that knock us out of structural integrity, personal structural integrity, which is trauma, or conforming with systems or pleasing other people, essentially. These things knock us out of alignment. And yet, many of us do these things, and we keep doing it. We don't ask questions.
So shocking.
And, we know instinctively when something doesn't feel quite right, but the cultural norm is, well, I better kind of run with the herd and not say anything.
Conform with it, right? Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this in the past. We just conform. We know it's not right, but look, just because it's a day-to-day normalized, it doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean it's our truth.
Yeah, you're so right.
And therefore, if we don't stand up and ask that question and commit to doing something about it, will never be in alignment.
So
and alignment outputs happiness as well. If we're thinking, I just want to be happy, but I feel miserable because of my work, my partner, but I'll just sort of put up with it. Well, you're out of personal structural integrity, my friend.
Absolutely. And that's a recipe for disaster, right?
Right. And it's not easy to challenge this, to speak your truth. But it's step by step. We got to start somewhere, and the start is you recognize that and start to challenge it.
Well, I tell you what, if anything, you've really simplified that, and I'm going to be going on holiday shortly, and I'm very much going to be in question of the structural integrity of the airplane. But you know what? You're so right. You're absolutely so right. How many times do we go through this exercise and are tested each day in our lives about our own structural integrity, about who we are? You know, Jeremy, you mentioned something about coaching and that you are a big fan of coaching as well, too, within the structure of integrity and leadership. How does that come into play with you and your experiences and your journey?
As I've said before, Grant, I think it unlocks alignment, and it unlocks alignment not through necessarily the coach doing anything. It's permission to the self through talking with the coach that allows you to redefine what you're doing, or whether it's work, a relationship, or whatever that disconnect, that feeling of disconnect is. I think first things first, it's questioning the self. Ultimately, what does integrity mean? If we go back to that, if we take the Latin definition really simply, it's a kind of wholeness or completeness. What do I mean by that? But, well, if you think, how many people do you know or have you known that project in one way at work, another way socially, and another way with family?
Yeah.
That's a definition of the divided self. You're not presenting as one. That's stressful because you're having to. You're an actor. You're not.
Which identity do you put forward?
Right. And I think that must be really tough. And yet many feel they have to do it because they're not speaking their truth. They're doing something. They're fitting in with a cultural norm that insists that they do that, and yet they know it's not right. I think when through coaching, it enables us to slow down, to notice we've been pulled off course, maybe out of integrity, and some thinking and methodology around how that alignment might be reconnected with.
That's so interesting. I just have to reflect. You're thinking about the integrity and the journey. How many organizations do you go to work each and every single day and it's get on the bandwagon, just jump on board. And we really don't want your thoughts. We just want you to be one of the norm. And what you're saying just rings so truth of, are you living your true self to your true values each and every day? If you're not, you're in conflict with your own integrity. That is eye-opening. And
so essentially the coaching is an access point to alignment, and done well, I think it reconnects head, heart, and values, and then points at clarity of purpose.
I love that. Well, listen, this is so exciting, and I thank you so much again for coming onto the show. I want to ask you now just a little bit about, for you, you're working with the Integrity Center, and obviously all of your businesses that you're working with manage, you lead, especially from a doctoral stance of where you are now. You have a whole different mindset that you're bringing to the stage. But when it comes to guiding you and your organization through change, or your members, how do you manage that for each of your people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it points at everything I've talked about already. And as a leader, I think it's vital as that notion of psychological safety. So you have a safe space. Because if fear taints change, then you'll, back to my point about conforming with norms,
Yeah.
you'll have a cohort of individuals within organizations that won't cohort with won't engage with positive change because they're fearful. So there must be an environment of safety. People must feel seen and safe, heard, and respected. If they're not, I think the basics are not in place, and you're not going to be able to progress to the next stage, which is then alignment. And we've talked about alignment already. You can't fake your way through values-based change.
That's so true.
People will sense that the lack of authenticity, and by that we're back to the point of holding the self to account again. And you can't say, okay, Grant, you have integrity. I can see it, and it lasts forever. This is not a sort of one-way ticket, and that's it. It fluctuates.
Yeah.
I liken this to the angel and the devil on our shoulders. You've heard of this sort of metaphor.
Yes. I can visualize it right now.
Right. And we all have this. No matter how good we are, we have this, the Buddhists call it the monkey brain. So let's stick with where the mind just spins off and ideas appear in your head. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But let's then bring that back to the angel and the devil. It's for us to empower the angel.
Yeah.
And the devil's talking gibberish to you and throwing these dumb ideas at you. You flick him off your shoulder. You empower, you don't listen. And this is a challenge. And it's maybe a little bit of a simple way of dressing up what integrity means. But I hope for some of your listeners is an access point where you think, I know that, and I listen, but just don't listen. We've to empower good, because there are so many bad actors out there. People in power. I really believe it starts with individuals, and we then associate with people like us, and we stand for the greater good. And that starts by recognizing, taking a pause, taking some time out, and recognizing, okay, I'm just not going to listen to this stuff. I'm going to listen to the angel. This is it. And further than that, it's like, if we're back to the sort of teams issue, organizational change, it's a little bit like an orchestra and the tuning of a musical instrument. When you have this ability, you're pitch perfect. You can hear the precise. I have several friends like this, and because I play a little bit of guitar badly.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm learning more about you today.
Jeremy, you need to play a D. Okay. And I play a D. No, that's not a D. Oh, well, there's something out of tune then. Yeah, retune your guitar. They're pitch perfect. Okay, so back to the metaphor. If even one string is out of tune, then the whole piece that's being played is off.
That's true.
I kind of liken, therefore, organizations to orchestras. But it really starts, I believe, top down. Because if leaders are not authentic, they're not holding themselves to account, they don't have personal structural integrity, it's disposable. I've got it now, but I'm throwing it away tomorrow. The orchestra's always going to be off.
That's so true. Wow. I love how you bring things to life visually and audibly. This is amazing. And I can just see. So I'll ask you my next question. Then the last half of that is, how do you manage change for yourself? Is it a conversation between the angel and the devil on your shoulder?
Always, because I think we all have this sort of sense of the divided self. But if we reframe that a little bit, what are we doing? We're just considering different perspectives.
Yeah.
So we're thinking, okay, of the self, and we're kind of programmed to protect the self. But if I then think, well, Grant's asking me this, that immediately feels uncomfortable. I don't think that's right. So then I flip to the other side, not necessarily the angel devil thinking here, but more, well, why would he think that? Let's try and look at it from his perspective. So there's a kind of openness And this goes back to values again, Grant, because more often than not, if we think of problems in the world, I don't know, governments, leaders, people rioting on the streets, they have this belief system and instantly they react rather than thinking, maybe that's not true, what I've read, and maybe I should ask some questions of it rather than just reacting, particularly really negatively. And this is the point. Yeah, back to what we were talking about. It's considering other perspectives. It's slowing it down. It's calmly assessing the situation. It's holding the self to account, which means it's not all about me and my ego and having more and projecting more. I have an ability, which I think is really important at this point, that we're able to consider other people's perspectives. It's not just about the self, it's beyond the self.
Yeah. And you know, that really relevates to, if you look at social media today, you know, and talking about just what you said, you know, so many instances, do you question it? Do you actually say to yourself, does this align with my values? Is this true? Is this something that I should do, etc.? There are so many mixed messages out there in the world today, and you don't know the true source. One thing you and I were taught, and I'm sure many people in academics were taught, is find the evidence. Cite the reference, find the evidence. Is it factual or not? And then don't just continue to bestow out just because you heard it.
Yeah. And even more than that, you find the factual source of the thing you're citing, but then you ask questions of that. Do I really believe that? Does that resonate with me? And do I need to go beyond that? And, you know, that it's not easy. It takes hard work. But, well, you know, I think you're right. It's quick fix solution with social media now that I want to find this, or even AI. I need the answer to this. But it's not always right. And even if it's, you get an answer, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, I recall even you and I, you know, we've had nice, healthy debates about topics together. That's what academics would do and business people would do with each other. And sometimes you might have an idea, because we are human, right? You might have an idea, present it forward, you know, and then thank goodness we have somebody that would question, what will happen if you do that? And then bring you right back into, oops, maybe we better have a different idea. And we need those types of people. We need more of that in the world today. And I'm so glad that you're sharing that.
Well, thanks. And, you know, I know we think the same on this one, that if people like you and I and numerous others don't ask questions of those in power, it becomes unconstrained and they can then do whatever they want to do. And then that gets really frightening. And we're seeing versions of that playing out right now, which I hope will be constrained moving ahead.
Yes, we are, which is so aligns with what my work has been as well too. And I think that's why you and I have collected and come together so easily, is because leadership and integrity and personal change, you know, starting from the root of fear, the fear of the changes that you're experiencing and you're within. How can people manage that? And that's where Scared So What comes into play.
Sure.
Jeremy, I'd just like to ask you as well too, what would you say the importance of personal change, coaching, and leadership is at work?
Well, I think they're the same dance, essentially.
Same dance.
So by that I mean that no outer change will stick without inner change first.
So true.
And, you know, it's, if you think of coaching, in my case, I first really engaged with a business coach when I was having my best year ever in business. And I just felt totally out of alignment. I couldn't make sense of it. And as I've mentioned before, it was rather like permission to the self to start looking at things somewhat differently. And because of that experience, really, that then catalyzed a whole wealth of different things for me. I set up a not-for-profit, which is still running now, called Honestly Limited, where we support a women's collective in Ghana. And some other meanderings, which then led to my to being accepted on the doctoral program, the same one as you. And then after this, the whole Integrity Center, and then specific for financial services, the Integrity Wealth Model. So what coaching, personal change, really strong leadership, I think back to this same dance, it's a kind of excavation of the soul.
Yeah.
And it helps us to remember who we are. That's how I
true.
would position it. So we right back to what we were talking about earlier, we enter the world as a blank canvas. We're fundamentally good. We can't be bad because we're sort of a blank sheet.
Yeah.
And then we're filled, and then we believe these things, and we believe those things to be absolutely true. We often don't even question them. When we stand up and question them, when we challenge them, when we commit to change, doing things better, and we stick with it, we don't just fall at the first hurdle. We're committed to doing it. Then transformation can embrace us.
Absolutely. You're so right.
Exciting. Yeah.
And it's a recipe that we can learn. It's a skill set that we can learn and we can bring into play.
It is. And you're doing this. You're doing this with your work. I'm trying to do this with my work.
You're not trying, you're doing. You're doing very well.
Thanks. But it's when we, and you'll have seen this, and I have with people I work with, but when we work with senior leaders, that they have a huge burden of responsibility, and yet they're almost part of the machine. They're not living beyond the machine, not because they really love it so much. That's different, because if your purpose is so aligned with what you're doing and you love it so much, then you really are in the zone. But when you're doing something because maybe you're fearful of losing respect, losing your income, and yet you're paying your family no attention, you're maybe really unfit and unhealthy, your diet's bad, your relationships are falling to bits, something needs to change. And I've seen leaders shift when they reconnect with long forgotten dreams or values, and they totally align with their purpose, but they then make sense of what it means to be in this notion of personal structural integrity. They're living their truth.
They're living their truth.
This ripple effect of transformation is palpable. You see it, and I think with leaders, when that happens and they're in the zone, and they're holding themselves to be the best version of themselves, then you start building really strong cultures as well.
I love that. That's so exciting. Jeremy, we have one final question for today for you and our listeners. What is one thing of advice you'd like to give out to people about change, coaching, leadership, or just life? Your final thoughts.
Well, that's an open one. Well, I think the big one is don't defer your alignment. And I think however you make sense of that, in my case, at the Integrity Center, we're helping individuals to empower them to make sense of what this word means and how it can be an exoskeleton, and yet enable the inner self to project in the best version. So don't postpone the truth. I think there are so many high functioning, exhausted leaders out there. They're human doings rather than huung beings.
I love that.
We need to find this balance back again. It's not about having more, accruing more, being admired, shows of wealth. In the end, this doesn't matter. I mean, again, plenty of research to those that are end of life, and they're asked the question, what would you do differently? A lot of them are saying, spend more time with family, get out in the open air, do the right thing, be honest and open. It's not all about money and so on. Don't get me wrong. We need to have a base level of income. But again, plenty of research to show that happiness doesn't go up incrementally when we earn above a certain level. So, I think we can get caught up in being productive, and your type of models, change coaching models, are invitations to view the way we operate in this world differently. It's not an obligation, it's an invitation, and that invitation is permanently open is if we choose to do it. So, and, you know, finally, just because something's normalized and others do it, and maybe it's even a cultural norm, it doesn't mean it's right or it's true. So get back into structural integrity and you'll be amazed at how far you can fly.
Wise words. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Very
Dr.
welcome.
Jeremy, it's just been just a joy. And if you, our listeners, would like to learn more about Dr. Jeremy Chapman and his work, you can go to his LinkedIn profile. I will put that into the episode here for all to follow. Jeremy, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Lovely to be here. Thanks, Grant.
Wonderful to have you as well. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll tune in next week. Take care. Thanks for joining us here on the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. If you found any of this information insightful, well, give us a like and follow along. Make sure that you tune in each week for more episodes as we talk further about what is personal change, how do you manage it with Scared So what about coaching, and also leadership, and how all three of these tie together. If you'd like to learn more, then go to our website at www.scaredsowhat.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that you come back soon.